What's up, guys? Justin and Kristys for Team Shenanigans, and today we're bringing you Kristys' Shadow Shade deck profile. As you can see, it's not my normal one of my playmats, so since it's Kristys' deck, we'll be using her playmat, and yeah, it's just a stipulation. So anyway, of course, Magic World Flag, and the buddy is Terry, because it's really the best buddy of the deck can have. I mean, you could do the Impact Monster Joe, or any one of the size zeros, but it's just better off to go with Terry. There's never a situation where you don't want to call him out. He's the best size 3 of the deck, really, as far as like your big beaters go. He's a 8/2/5 if you have, what is it, 5 or more soul? Is it correct? 3 or more soul? Oh shit. 3 or more soul, he gets extra crit, and he always has double attack and soul guard. And with the way the deck can revive stuff really easily with Simbar and just all the soul you can build up in this, it's just really annoying to get over. And if you don't have Penetrate or Shadow Dive, you're just going to have a hard time dealing with this deck. So going into the monsters, of course, so you run 4 copies of the buddy, 4 copies of Terry. And then your backup right now in this build is 3 copies of Damian. He kind of replaced the size 2 Joe in the deck. He just kind of fits the deck a little better. The size 2 Joe is still a really good card, but Damian just kind of fills that gap where if you don't have your Terry or your Impact Joe, he can just really do what you need him to. So it's a pay gauge, and you remove a soul from him to destroy any card on your field. It's not counter speed, so it's not as good as Impact Joe, but it can destroy any card. So there's set spells, the annoying item you want to take care of, or anything. And he's also sitting on pretty good stats on a 7/3. What is that? 5. Again, this is not my deck. It's Kristys, so I'm not as familiar with the cards. And of course, he has Soul Guard. And also, how many cards do you have to have in drop to get his? 15 cards in drop, and the soul you ditched, you get a card just back from the drop zone into soul. So that helps a lot. So you basically only had to pay a gauge. So we're gonna go into the last size 3, which is actually an Impact Monster, and you have your Impact Joe. Really good stats. It's 2 gauge, and you put on top of a Shadow Shade that's already on your field, and it is an 8/3/5. And the beauty of this card is the counter ability, which is once per turn, you can just remove a soul from him to destroy a monster on your opponent's field. So you build up all your soul on one of your other monsters, call this guy, get 1 extra swing, so it's all that offensive pressure, and then all the defensive pressure too. On your opponent's turn, you can just, okay, let me destroy that thing that's going to have double attack, or going against Dungeon World, you know, pop the Tetsuya when you enter battle, or whatever. And even something with Soul Guard, on your field when you bring him out, you pop it once, and on their field, on their turn, when they go to enter battle, you pop it again, and you just got that off the field. So it's a really annoying card to have to deal with, and again, you can just keep spamming Simbar to keep getting it back, and just keep going into him and swinging. It helps provide that extra offense of the deck, where it's really hard to deal with if they have the zeros and the item and a Terry, and then they go final and go into this guy, and just, it's control while being offensive, and it's, speaking from experience, it's extremely annoying. And that's it for the boss monsters. Next, you going into this is the only size 2 you run in the deck, Silhouette Simbar. He's a really, just an amazing card. He's a size 2, he's free to call out, and he's, what, a 3/3/3. But you very rarely call him out. Maybe first turn, if you have to, you just call him out, swing. Oh, wow, I had to just swing with 3 crit, and I don't get Soul Guard. Boo-hoo. But otherwise, you use him for his in-hand ability, where you discard him, and then just grab any Shadow Shade from your drop zone, and add it to hand. So it's very annoying. It's your main reviving engine and everything, so pretty frustrating to have to deal with. Next, you run 4 copies of this new-ish card. It's one of the newer cards they got, Silhouette Spirit. It's only 1 crit, and it's low power, but when it enters the field, you just take a spell from your drop and put it in the soul of something on your field. So you just got a little guy to help link attack with, or just pop, or just kind of dink for 1, but you also just got a soul in something. So it's just free soul and free pluses for days. And next, rounding out the monsters, you run one copy of Countdown of the Distant Days. You just swing with him, and you can bounce back to hand. The size zeros in this deck really help for like the Aussie matchup where you have to link attack and stuff like that, and maybe a big wall where you can't quite get over it. You can always have those size zeros to help you kind of either dink for damage or link attack over a big wall. And then one copy of the OG Countdown, where you just pay a life and bring him back every turn. The life is just basically like paying gauge in this deck because you're just sitting with the big beefy guy in the center all day, so you have all that extra life to pay. Which is why we run in, going into the items, she chooses not to run any of the gun rods because we have access to this card, Burning Fist, where the gun rods are good, but they all cost gauge, except for, there's one that doesn't cost gauge, but where it costs a life. But this costs a life, and you can, again, accesses link attack and helping you like run over those little monsters on the side. So it helps you in your Aussie matchup. And the gun rods also kind of really hurt the deck against 5th Omni, and the deck also like already has a not so good matchup against 5th Omni. So this doesn't cut into all the gauge you have to pay, because it is a really gauge heavy deck. Even though Magic World does have access to a lot of gauge excel, you can still burn through it pretty quickly. So, moving on to the spells, which, let's be honest, Magic World, that's the highlight of the deck. 4 copies of the Shade, where you cast this card and you gauge one, draw one, and then this card goes to the soul of a Shadow Shade monster on your field. So, it's just free pluses for days. It's basically Dragon Emperor Legend, but you get a soul instead of a life. So, if the card also gave a life, it would just be the dumbest thing. Next, 4 copies of, what is this? Malicious Selector. So this is one of the spells that's like a 2 spells in 1. It's it costs a gauge, and you can choose to give something +3/+3 counterattack, or you can just destroy a size 1 or lower, right? Or is it only size 1?
Yeah. And then go into the soul afterwards.
Yeah, and then no matter which effect you chose, it goes in the soul. So a really annoying thing you can do with this, it's, let's say you have a Terry on the field with no soul, and they swing at it, and let's say Terry has 5k defense, they're swinging at it for 8. You pay gauge, cast this, give Terry +3/+3, and normally, you know, he wouldn't get his counterattack off because it's swinging and the attacker wins. But since this goes in the soul at the end of resolution, then the +3/+3 would happen, and Terry would still get the counterattack, and then the soul guard would just kick this out. So it's just a really dumb card. And the whole the other ability of counter destruction is really good too, because counter destruction is one of the best things in this game. And this card doesn't provide you counter destruction, but destruction. This is Trick or Trick, and again, it is 2 different skills, right? 2 different skills?
Yeah.
It's not counter speed, but thank God, because it'd be busted if it was. It's already a busted enough card. The first skill is you can, when you cast this, you can put, is it 2 spells from your drop or 1 spell from the drop into the soul? Is it 1 spell?
1 spell from the drop.
Yes, 1 spell from the drop in the soul, and then
itself.
Yeah, and then itself goes in the soul. And then the second skill is you can ditch 2 soul to destroy a card on the field. So a set spell, an item, a monster, whatever. And then it goes in the soul. So you basically lost 1 soul and 1 card from your hand to pop anything. So it's an amazing card. It's what you used to use to turbo soul into the original size 2 Joe to get the whole 6 damage off in 1 turn. But, I mean, you could still possibly sideboard a couple size 2 Joes depending on your matchup, whatever tournament season, whatever the meta is going in. But you mainly just use Trick or Trick just for the destruction, or if you don't want your Terry to die, if you don't have a Simbar in hand or whatever. But otherwise, it's just a very annoying card to deal with. Like, I run Legend World, and this card kind of screws Oberon over, and it's a little annoying. Oberon, Arthur, whatever. Next, you go into more of the, just more and more plussing, because that's what Magic World does. 4 copies of Nice One, just the no life No life restriction like most of the other draw spells. Just pay a gauge, draw 2. Best draw spell in the game. In the OG draw 2 in the game. Next, 4 copies of Never Say Never. This is the only Gauge Excel besides the Shade and another card we'll get to here in a second that she runs in the deck. We don't run the first volume, second volume combo anymore just because kind of found herself really in situations where in your bad matchups when you're turboing stuff into Soul to try to keep your stuff around, sometimes you'll have something you can call and then like one card left in hand, so why not let that card be Never Say Never. Gain 2 gauge, draw 2 cards. So it's just it's the first volume but not counter speed with the little extra added on bonus of drawing 2 cards potentially.
Well, there's no point in playing first volume now to me because I played second volume before. And now second volume got replaced with Little Light.
Yeah, going into Little Light. Yeah, Little Light basically does everything second volume did, but better for this build. So it's like you replaced the first volume, second volume combo with just basically better cards. Because you replaced first volume that just gave you 2 gauge with a card that gives you 2 gauge and can potentially draw you 2 cards. So then you replace first volume with Little Light, which says you cast this, you gain a life, and search your deck for, is it any monster, and put it in your gauge or drop?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're getting the life, and you're milling whatever you want, or just gaining that extra gauge. And then you know what gauge you need to pay to have that card in the drop. So it's just a really good card. And then rounding out the spells are going to be like the attack nulls. So we run 3 copies of Solomon Shield. It's just the can nullify any attack as long as it's not a link attack. And then 3 copies of That's How I Roll, which nullifies any attack when you have a size 2. No, the size 2 or higher has to be being attacked.
Yeah.
Yeah, the size 2 or greater monster has to be being attacked. So it's not as good. And honestly, there's not a whole lot of good attack nulls. I mean, Magic World has access to a lot of attack nulls, but a center-based deck like Shadow Shades doesn't have access to a lot of them because you have basically the attack null that says you can't you can only cast it if you don't have a monster in your center, and then you have like these 2. So you can run Magical Goodbyes, and we would both definitely recommend at least siding them because Magical Goodbye is still an amazing card. But for right now, like these are just what we're choosing to go with. So that's the deck profile, guys. We don't really have a side deck put together right now just because side decks are really, like, we only put side decks together when we're about to go to regionals, and that, of course, is going to be reflective of whatever's big in the meta. So make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't, and stay tuned for more content. So thanks for watching, guys.